Essentially, this is a budget-friendly option. Video autofocus is great. Photo autofocus is also good. It is showing some scratches on it. If you are comparing this directly to the G Master, there is going to be a noticeable difference. You can connect this to your computer, to your phone. I don't think you can go wrong with this. Are you looking for a more budget-friendly version of the 7200 f2.8 G Master Mark II? This could very well be that. This is the Tamron 70 to 180, so 20 mils less than that 200 mil, but it's a lot less money. And the key being is f2.8 throughout. Had a decent amount of time with this. Thank you, Tamron, for sending it through. I am returning it to them. I don't get to keep this. They don't get to see anything about this video before I post it. And I've had the opportunity to shoot a wide variety of things: weddings, cars, birds, people, so I've got a lot of examples to show you, which I will scatter as always throughout the video. I've got to say that this lens renders color and contrast pretty nicely. Bunch of JPEGs on the screen for you to see right here. These are all just straight from the camera. Tamron lenses in general, I find, render things a little bit warmer than Sony lenses, which you might like, you also might not like, but you can of course fix that in post. One of the things that Tamron did with this in the version 2 is they reduced the minimum focus distance on the wider end of things, so when you're at 70 mil to 0.3 meters, compared to the original, which is 0.85 meters, so quite a big difference there. Now it doesn't mean that this is a macro lens by any means, but you can get kind of close to that. This version is also compatible now with Tamron's lens utility because it has a USB-C port there. We'll talk more about what you're going to use that for later. Video autofocus is great for tracking people, no issues with it. Behaves exactly as expected it to when I'm using it on the Sony a7R5. Photo autofocus also exactly as I'd expect it to perform when I had it set to birds with the a7R5. Little screen recording for you to see here. Zero issues. Kind of goes around a bit of the birds, but that's what happens with my Sony lenses as well, because birds' eyes are pretty small. It's looking for the head and then it finds the eye, and it does a really good job. So if you're thinking about using this for birding, it's gonna work fine. I also had the opportunity to test this with cars with the a7R5 using the AI in Sony's cameras that can track cars now. Very impressed with the performance, how quickly it picks them up on the track, sticks to them, and keeps up with them when they're going around the corners, and even when it disappears behind, when the car disappears behind the barrier there and it picks it up again, it didn't really have any issues doing so. It's good to know that Tamron can make lenses that keep up with the latest and greatest AI autofocus tech that Sony has in its newest bodies. Sharpness is obviously very subjective. Some like it, some don't. You can make your own decision, but generally speaking, it is a sharp lens throughout. Chromatic aberration and any issues, imperfections with the lens, like most lenses coming out these days, it's handled extremely well, even in some more contrasty situations where you would typically, where you're pushing the lens to really try and find some chromatic aberration on the edges of things there. It handles it very, very well.
All right, focus breathing at 70 mil. And now at 180.
Now, it will never be as good as Sony glass, obviously, because you can use focus breathing compensation with Sony glass, and you can't do that with this. Stabilization on Tamron lenses is called VC, or vibration control. And when zoomed in with the a7R5 all the way to 180 there, as soon as you hit that shutter, you can immediately see what it does. It does it very, very well. Now remember, this is never going to be as good as Sony's, so if you are comparing this directly to the G Master or even the 7200 f4, side by side, there is going to be a noticeable difference, especially the further you zoom in. With that said, are you going to look at this when it's at 180 and say it's not very good? No. If you're not comparing it to anything, it's going to look very good still. Now, unlike the 50 to 400 from Tamron, which has 3 different vibration control modes, depending on if you just want it to kind of stabilize everything or just panning movements, this just has the one. And there is no way to control it. It's just on or off, and you control that in the body. There is no physical switch on the lens anywhere to control that vibration control, so it's just done on whatever body you're using. Build quality is completely on par with all of Tamron's lenses now. This is the new 17 to 50, which I'll be doing a video on soon, and you can see side by side, other than the size difference and the features on the lenses, finish, design, they look very similar. Even the feel on the zoom rings and the focus rings here, they feel and look very similar. Tamron has like its uniform style now, which they're keeping with, which is nice, much like Sony has their style, which they also keep with. Keeping things consistent is good because it means when you buy a lens from a manufacturer that you own a lens from before, you know what you're kind of getting. Now, I will say that the kind of shinier finish on here, it's like a cross between a shiny and matte finish. I personally prefer the finish on the Sony lenses where it's a bit more matte. I've had this lens for a few weeks now and it is showing some scratches on it. This is a loaner copy. Sorry, Tamron. It has been with me through a lot of things, so it's to be expected in and out of bags, but there are marks. I don't know if it'll pick them up here and there. Are they bad? No, they're just kind of like surface marks on there. And you could probably No, they're not buffing out. But that's just to do with the finish that is on these lenses. Now, in terms of weight, this is 855 grams versus the GM Mark II, which is 1,045 grams. But you are obviously getting a little bit more reach with that lens. But if weight is your priority, then this weighs a little bit less. The zoom on this is large, fairly loose, but it does feel nicely controlled there. That's your sound when you're zooming in and out. Some people like to know about that. One of the nice things with the Tamron Lens Utility app is that this at the back here is obviously your focus ring. Now, because it has the USB-C port on here, you can connect this to your computer, to your phone, using the Tamron Lens Utility app and change the functionality of this. So if you want this to become your aperture ring, you can do so. And that's what I changed it to, because I do really like having an aperture ring on a lens. If you want to change the direction that you focus it, you can do that in the Lens Utility app. You can also change the throws or how much you have to turn it. And you can also make it a little bit more linear if you prefer it to be more like a non-focus by wire lens, even though this is a focus by wire lens. What linear means is if you want to try and replicate the same movement over and over again when it's in manual focus, you can do so. If you didn't want to have it linear, it's going to be a lot harder to replicate that, because depending on how fast you turn it, it focuses faster or slower. That's called focus acceleration. You got a custom switch on the side here, which changes from 1, 2, and 3. And what that does is essentially change the functionality of this button on the side here. You do just have the one custom button and then a lock switch there, which will lock it at 70. Unlock it, now you can zoom in and out. That's for storing it when you travel with it. But yeah, if you want to change the custom function of this, you can do so in the Lens Utility app. You can do things like autofocus, manual focus, set A and B in and out focus points. You can assign a focus limiter, focus presets. There's a bunch of things you can do in there. Now, this does work a little bit differently to how you'd expect. As an example, if you have one set to autofocus, manual focus, when you tap that button, it will change from autofocus to manual focus. If you want to have this as your aperture ring, you have to assign that to custom 1, 2, or 3. So let's say you assign that to custom 2. Now when you're in custom 2 and you hit this, it will change this from manual focus to your aperture ring. A note here, if you like keeping it like that and you change out of custom mode 2, this will no longer be your aperture ring. So if you want to keep that as your aperture ring, you gotta leave it in whatever you assign it to in the custom switch there. It has limitations by doing it that way, and that is a big reason why you might want something like the G Master Mark II. Because it has all of the features on the lens, you have full manual control. This is obviously a more budget-friendly option, and it doesn't have the ability to do so. It is moisture and dust resistant. Big gasket on the back there for when it's attached to the body. Everything is sealed, including the USB-C port there, so you don't have to worry about water getting inside. 67mm filter thread on the front there, which actually Tamron is doing on all of their lenses, which is really nice. Most of their lenses for E-mount, in fact. What that means is you can take 67mm filters from one of their lenses and put on a different one, and you don't have to worry about using step-up rings. So overall, what are you losing when you buy this compared to the G Master Mark II? With full manual control, all the tactile switches, buttons, aperture rings, everything like that, you don't get the full availability of that on this lens here. It's a lot more limited. You lose that 20mm of reach. You also lose the added performance of having a Sony lens on a Sony body, so you get better focus breathing compensation, you get better stabilization. You also can't use this with a teleconverter, whereas the 7200 G Master Mark II, you can put the little, where is it? You can put this teleconverter on it, which will increase the focal range of it. So this is a 2x1, so I can make 200mm into a 400mm at the loss of a little bit of contrast and some other things, but that's a whole video in itself. So you can't use a teleconverter with this. Don't have a way of comparing sharpness with this. I have used the G Master and it is beautifully sharp, but I don't think you will look at anything created with this and say, it's not that sharp, because it is. And then another thing, you might like the branding of Sony lenses and having everything Sony. You might like Tamron and having everything Tamron. That's more of a personal preference thing anyway. Generally speaking though, for the cost that this is, I don't think you can go wrong with this. If this is all your budget allows for, if you're just starting out or you just like buying more budget-friendly options, you really can't go wrong with the Tamron 70-180 f2.8 version 2. I'll see you in the next one. Take care.